As Tim just said, my name's Matt, and some of you may know me as the Raspberry Pi guy. I just want to know, and I'll do this with all my presentations, how many of you have heard of me before? Raise your hand. Yeah. Okay, well, now you've all heard of me. So today I'm going to be talking about how to engaging students in computer science from a pupil's perspective, because being only 14, I'm still in school. I'm in year 10 and doing my GCSEs. But before I do that, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself so you know who's talking to you. So, I'm 14, in year 10 as I said, doing my GCSEs, and for the past year and a half now, I've run a Raspberry Pi YouTube channel called the Raspberry Pi Guy, and I offer all sorts of Raspberry Pi videos and tutorials to help people in their journey with the Raspberry Pi. So to date I've had around 1.25 million views, and I've got almost, I think, 24,000 subscribers. So here is my channel, and there'll be links to it later on in the presentation, so if you haven't seen me before, you can go and check me out. So, I think that's enough about me, so let's go back to the question, and question/statement. So, engaging students in computer science. So let's delve into that a little bit. So I'm going to start with the problem, or I'll lead into the problem, that's it. So, in recent times, computer science and computing has been reintroduced into schools. Is that a good thing? Yes, it is. We've got ICT slowly dying out. We no longer really need to teach people how to use Microsoft Word and Excel. Those programs are pretty intuitive now and need hardly any teaching. And computer science is gradually leaching its way back into schools, and people are picking up keyboards and learning how to program and electronics and the kind of things which should be taught in a computing curriculum. But is it time for us all to lay back and celebrate this? Because it has been quite a long campaign to get computer science back into schools. I don't think so. And the reason for this is because, I'll put it into a short statement. The interesting, intriguing subject that is computer science is being taught, in the majority of cases, in schools, in a boring way. And that might sound unfair, but let me just justify that point. So, I've been one of the pioneers of the current generation of students who have just kind of managed to get computer science in schools. I do a lot of computer science outside of school, but my school I do a computing GCSE after school. I managed to get them to do that. And so, I'm one of the first people in a long time to actually learn any computing at all in schools. And the first program that we were taught in school was a finances program. And finance programs, they are boring. So it was something like, oh, I'm going to work out this guy's tax because he wants a program to do it, and I need to input certain values. And sure, it taught me about functions, it taught me about loops, it taught me about variables, but it was incredibly dull and boring. And when someone says computer science, you don't go finance programs, you go Raspberry Pi, you go programming, but fun programming like games programming, and the interesting things about computer science. You don't think, oh, finances, or a weight program that will help you lose weight by graphing out your weight over the days. That's one of the controlled assessments that I'm doing in my computing GCSE at the moment. And that's not interesting in the slightest, unless I don't know. Yeah. So I think that the statement that I just made, that computer science is taught in the majority of cases in a boring way, that is valid. And it's not the teacher's fault necessarily. In some cases, it could be, but I don't think it is. It's the syllabus's fault and sort of the exam boards, because what they're looking for is to tick boxes. Oh, I want my student I want the student studying my course to be able to know variables, So the teacher's going to stand up and tell me what a variable is. I can tick that box. Right? It's all about ticking boxes, and it's really quite dull and boring, and it's not inspiring students. And that's what it should do. We want to engage students in computer science. We don't want to just feed it to them so they're bored and then don't take it any further. The whole idea about computer science going back into schools is to actually encourage growth in this sector. And you're not going to do that with a finance program. So, it's all very well slagging computing off, in schools anyway, but what are the actual solutions to this? Now I'm going to nick a couple of phrases that I've heard, and my favourite is one from Carrie-Anne Philbin, who's another YouTuber and blogger, and that is stealth learning. And stealth learning, or the way that Carrie-Anne describes it, is sort of learning without actually realising you're being taught something. So you could be doing something, say programming a computer game, and having so much fun that you don't realise that you're learning about variables, you don't realise you're learning about loops, functions, and all sorts. Whereas with a finances program, you're painfully aware of this. And so stealth learning is a great and interesting way of teaching people things, and I'm going to go on to that. And the next phrase is, Jim Darby told it to me, but I think it came from someone else, and that is personally meaningful projects. So these are projects or things that you do in class that students actually feel that those projects are meaningful. So a meaningful project could be a robot. That's something that's meaningful because they can customise their robot. Now, if you get them to code a program that has no meaning to them whatsoever, then it's not a personally meaningful program, and they won't be interested in it. So there are a couple of phrases that I'm probably going to be using a little bit in the next part. So now I'm going to tell you about the solutions to this problem of how to engage students in computer science. And they're actually not as hard as you think. I think there's sort of three main ones that stick out when teaching computer science with the Raspberry Pi, and hopefully they'll come up here, if I remember. Not that one. Yes, this one. Robots, Sonic Pi, and Minecraft Pi. These are the three most valuable things a teacher can have when teaching computer science. Why? Because they inspire students, they teach everything on the syllabus, and they demonstrate perfectly things like stealth learning and personally meaningful projects. So, I will move on to robots. So, if any of you went to the Raspberry Jamboree, organised by Alan over here, you will probably know my feelings about robots. They're amazing, and they're probably one of the best ways of teaching computer science because, and especially programming, and also electronics, because they show how computers work and how things like logic, how logic works, really easily and in a visual manner. They're fun and they're cross-curricular. For example, robots, whilst they do cost money, for example, a basic robot would cost you £50 with a Raspberry Pi at the centre. I know that can be a bit expensive for schools, and I'm going to go on to things that aren't expensive at all in a second. But if a school can dish out that kind of money, then they can just use it in pretty much as much as a curriculum as they like. For example, art. You could design the robot's outer casing, or design technology. You can design the electronics inside it, and all sorts of things. And then you can you can actually program them in computer science, or in computing, as it's called in lots of schools. And if any of you watch my Jamboree speech, you'll see that I talk about how robots demonstrate programming fundamentals incredibly well for something like a while loop. So a while loop just goes around and around for as long as the statement is true. So say the statement is just true, so it will continue going around and around. What better way to see this working than by watching your robot just spin in a circle forever? And it's really easy to visualize what's going on your computer screen and actually bring it off the screen into something that's more personal to you. And so that's why robots are actually a really good means of teaching computer science, and you don't necessarily associate the two. Now the next thing in my 3-tier solution to solving boredom in classrooms is Minecraft. And some of you know that I ran the Minecraft Pi workshop with Craig, that we ran 2 today, because Minecraft is that popular. Everybody loves Minecraft, and especially young people like Minecraft, because it's creative and it provides a sense of escapism. And now normally in Minecraft, it's a computer game, for those of you who don't know, where you just go around and you build things and you escape from creatures, and it's essentially an adventure game, sort of an open sandbox adventure game. Now on the PC, so this is on normal computers and Xbox, you can go around and you build your house, etc. But with a Pi, you can actually use programming languages to interface with Minecraft Pi. So why build a giant castle by scratch when you can make a program to do this? And a Python program, it's pretty easy. And then you can have a castle wherever you want. And it's actually really easy. Some of the programs that Craig and I were using, they're only 6 lines long, and you already get noticeable, cool effects that are a lot more interesting than finance programs. And so just simple things like Minecraft, which is free. That's another thing that Minecraft, and the next one, SonicPi, has over something like robots, is the fact that they are free. So robots will cost you money, but ultimately I think they're worth it. But if you're, say, an after-school club in a school with limited funds, then something like Minecraft is just free to download, and there are lots of resources online from people like myself, or Craig, or Martin O'Hanlon, who's another keen Minecrafter. And you'll find that lots of your students will have played around with Minecraft, and they think that it's incredibly exciting that they can make things like rainbows from computer code, and things like Snake in the actual game. Moving on to the final tier in my 3-tier solution to solve boredom in classrooms, and that is SonicPi. Now SonicPi is a computer program developed by, I think it's Sam Aaron and Carrie-Anne Fielding, and it is a really easy method of coding music. It's essentially a music synthesizer. So you go into this interface, this environment, that looks like this, and you just code in a few simple syntax what you want to play, and how many times you want it to play for, etc. And you can create your own music. And again, this links back to personally meaningful projects. For example, you can make music that you like, and some of the stuff that's been created is pretty radical, like Alex from Raspberry TV did The Flight of the Bumblebee all the way through. And you can code whatever you like. You can make your own music symphonies without ever touching a musical instrument and being tone deaf. And so that's why SonicPi is also incredibly powerful. And like Minecraft Pi, it's free. So as you can see, computing and computer science doesn't need to be boring when there are free things like Minecraft and SonicPi and the more advanced things like robots available. Don't need to teach finance programs. So, another question that I get asked is how will this change computer science in schools? For one, the classroom will sit up and start listening to you, and they'll actually want to learn about the stuff that you're teaching. When I'm taught about finance applications, I switch off. I couldn't care less. It's boring, and it's not meaningful, and it's just not interesting in any way. However, something like Minecraft I'm interested in, and I'll listen. And that's essentially the mind of a pupil condensed into a couple of sentences. If they find it interesting, they'll listen to you and they'll learn things. And that's how it will shape it. You're not going to kill half the class with boredom, and you're actually going to stimulate minds and make them want to learn about computer science. And then you'll find that your school has to rapidly provide after-school clubs for the children interested in robots and the children interested in Minecraft and Sonic Pi and things like that. So, in conclusion, I think, and I'm sure there is validity in the statement, that computer science and the way that it's taught at the moment, in the vast majority of cases, is boring. And that's very unfortunate, and it can be easily remedied with the stuff that I've talked about today. And I hope that if you're a teacher, and or if you have educated people, and are going to in the future, that you consider this and stimulate the next generation of programmers and coders. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions?
Yep.
I'm a teacher and I totally agree with you 100%. I think teaching finance to people who are in computer science is complete twat. And I am so pleased that ICT is going out the window, because you can learn that in your bedroom. You can learn it at home. I don't want to teach you that. I do want to teach what this young man wants to do. And I think, considering his age, I think he spoke extremely eloquently well, and I wish he could come to my college and teach to the guys. And maybe do some radical reform in the education system as well, because it's definitely what it needs. And I think this young man is going to go really far. Well done.
Can I just ask, did you find primary IT as boring as the secondary curriculum?
So primary IT, I think, is slightly different to secondary IT because, well, it was to me because I hadn't really experienced computers too much. We had a computer at home, but then it was all a little bit new to me, like Microsoft Word and things. Certainly, Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel and things like that, they do not need to be taught in secondary school. Full stop. I think they do need to be taught in primary school. Alongside computer science, because it's still bad if you if people in your classroom can't use a word processor. You can, as Mike said, learn that in your bedroom though, so I don't think that it should play that big a role at all in primary school education.
Does it have to be Microsoft?
No. But that's what everyone uses, and
LibreOffice is an alternative.
Yeah.
That's free.
Absolutely.
Great.
Can you briefly mention the journey that you went through in your spare time to actually learn computing, because you do a lot of stuff more outside school than you actually do in school?
Okay. So Craig's just asked me to recap on how I got interested into computers. So I first became interested in computing and computer science around 2.5 years ago now. Before I knew pretty much nothing about computers other than the stuff that I'd been taught in primary school, so that's word processing, etc. And then one day, I used to be very interested in consumer electronics, so iPads and mobile phones and that kind of thing. But I didn't know anything about any of the interesting stuff that went on behind it. So I didn't know anything about programming, coding, electronics, all sorts. And one day I saw in a consumer electronics magazine that I used to read a little tiny article about this new Raspberry Pi computer that was promising to change the world. And I was very interested in this, but as soon as I started reading about it, I was just overwhelmed by a tide of jargon. And but gradually, I managed to learn a little bit more about it, and then a little bit more, and I found it hooked me into this new world of computer science. And when I got a Raspberry Pi, I couldn't stop playing around with it, and I ran into lots of problems throughout on that journey. And so I decided to set up a YouTube channel when there wasn't too much support out there back in the early days. I set up a YouTube channel to help people like myself become interested in computers and to make computing with the Raspberry Pi more accessible for everyone.
Any other questions?
This might be a bit hard for you to answer since you're male.
Yeah.
You talked about 50% of the class being bored.
Yeah.
I wonder if you've got any thoughts about engaging females. Because I teach in a sixth form college and there are no girls taking computing A-level,
Okay.
and very few doing ICT, aren't there?
That's a very interesting point, and it does come up throughout things like engineering as well, and the fact that women aren't really associated with that kind of sector, and the fact that it's male dominated. Well, I think that women should be encouraged into going into something like computer science, but I don't think that their opportunities should be any greater than the kind that a young boy would have. I think that they should be equal, but they shouldn't be any greater. For example, my school went on an engineering trip one time, and they subsidised all the girls, so more of them went. And I really didn't agree with that, because it's discouraging for the males on the trip, and I think that it should be equal opportunity. And yeah, girls should be encouraged, and you have things like people like Carrie Ann, they're very, they're campaigners for this. But I don't think they should be
Positive.
yeah, exactly.
I agree with you on that, but I wonder, you know, just
Yeah, if
the
I had
point at which the girls lose interest and...
I've got two daughters, they're up the back there, and they, okay, I'm a bit geeky myself, they're a bit geeky, but from my observations, the creative side, computing, is, just trying to be careful what I say, I don't want to sound wrong, is a good way of encouraging them. There is one girl out there, Charlotte, she creates electronic jewellery. She's an engineering student. And that's a boy probably won't create that sort of thing. He may create a robot. Sonic Pi goes across the genders. Minecraft goes across the genders because it's creative. My daughters love Minecraft. Robots, maybe not so. They're associated more with boys. They shouldn't be, but they are. But I think with what Matt has, a couple of the points Matt brought out, the creative side of the Sonic Pi and with Minecraft is a good way towards that.
Is there anything else in addition to Minecraft? Because as a female myself, I'm teaching year 10 pupils, young year 10 girls, they'd be scared of Minecraft. And I can't stand it. I've got a 10-year-old who lives at home and he sits and plays on it and then watches people on YouTube playing it. But then with the female side, is there anything that's very similar but where you're not making housing and it's quite construction orientated?
Craig, would you like to
jump in here? I think with being not in computing is because there's a massive perception that it's male. And same with gaming, there's a massive perception that stuff like Minecraft is exclusively male, therefore it should be people should look down on it if they're not male. When I've been teaching, I've been running workshops, girls enjoy it just as much as the guys. 50%, well actually 48% of gamers are females, so it is actually representative of them. And girls, when I did it in my class as well, really enjoyed it. I think some of the perception there may be that they just haven't given it a chance, that they perceive it as nerdy, therefore they're not going to be interested in it. And I do understand that if they're not interested in it, but I think a lot of it can be just down to a little bit of preconception.
we need to wrap this session up quite quickly, so is it a quick question?
Oh no, just to continue with course.
Okay.
I think it's preconception more than anything else. The fact that even if you yourself said that I'm the geeky, my kids are the geeky, so it's got that preconception already. Teenage girls especially are going to run them off and but if you catch them early, like you're saying, because I teach 7 to 11-year-olds coding and working from scratch and CSS and HTML. Girls love it just as much. They like being able to produce something, make something, put out a website.
You're saying year 6 or is it sixth formers?
No, it's like year 10. So
Oh, year 10. Yeah.
But yeah, the scratch and things like that, they love and they enjoy. But I'm just thinking about the games and things, which is where...
I think it's going to get easier
Yeah, I think-
as computer science now becomes part of the curriculum. It's when they're year 10, it's just being introduced. They haven't been caught early enough, I think.
So to have somebody with the tux paint for the 5, that would be much more of a female creating a picture. I don't know who's familiar with tux paint, but my daughter loves doing that, but my son wouldn't go near it. He wants to play Warcraft.
I think
Different things, yeah.
the stereotypes are, as computing becomes more and more prominent in schools and in education, the stereotypes will gradually fade away until...
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully. I think that's the way it's going. There's evidence that that's what's happening right now.
Is it quick?
Yeah, we'll be quick. I think I teach quite a lot of girls at Peterborough, and they're 16 to 19, and I do Arduino stuff, but it links in really well with pies because the two can work together. And I teach a lot of wearable tech stuff, so stuff that they can actually, and I don't want to be stereotypical here, but girls are a lot more creative and arty that I've found on computing courses, and the wearable tech is really good. But because you can use things like the Pibrella and things like that, and you start sensing the real world and doing real world computing, you could link it to other interests around science, whether they're into environmental stuff, and start sensing about the real world things. So you might catch them with that and link it just to other disciplines, because they might be really good at school at doing science and doing physics and stuff like that, and you can link it into wearable computing and real world stuff. Might be a try.
I think the answer there really is there's no single solution, but there are solutions. It's finding